Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our ongoing study in the complete works of Plato. We're going to take a look at the introduction to the Phaedo. It'll be pages 125 to 155 in the works of Plato translated by Jowett. Pages 125 to 155, and it covers the introduction to the Phaedo. And the Phaedo is Plato's dialogue on the immortality of the soul. Very important dialogue on the immortality of the soul. And we'll look at it in 3 moments. So let's go to block 1 and begin with the immortality of the soul. The nature of death. Man is not his own property, but a possession of the gods. At his execution, Socrates will go to other gods, he says, who are wise and who are good, freed from the prison of the body. Light of the mind. At death, the soul separates from the body. We are free from the dominion of the body, beholding truth as the light of the mind, separated from the corruption of the body. Now, immortality based on all opposites that generate each other, from living to dying, and then from dying to living. Nature completes itself in this circle of nature. The living rises up from the dead. Opposites generate each other. And then the doctrine of reminiscence. The self possesses a latent knowledge from pre-existence and the capacity for the power of association, a latent understanding of the knowledge of the realm of the forms. The soul is unchangeable. Through the senses it descends into change. The soul commands, the body serves. The soul is the image of divinity. In death, the soul ascends to the company of the gods. So we're talking about the image of divinity for Plato. Free from the body, we behold the light of truth, purged from illusion. We contemplate existence through the medium of the realm of ideas, the medium of ideas. After death comes judgment. Those of incurable deeds are thrown into the Tartarus, never to come out. Those of venial sins are purified and rewarded for the good they have done, then returning to the course of the ages. Remember, the last lesson, the ever-reborn soul is what Plato believed. He believed in the ever-reborn soul. The ever-reborn soul out of the realm of ideas, associated with the realm of ideas, the realm of the forms. Now, block 2, we have some considerations to look at. Jowett digresses here, but he sets us up for the final arguments for immortality in block 3. So it's kind of a bracketed contemplative block 2 that we kind of pay attention to before we enter into the arguments for immortality in block 3. All right, so let's go through these contemplative considerations. First principle should be constantly reviewed. The scientific age has challenged belief in immortality of the soul. Immortality of the soul must be argued again to become a living belief. Philosophy has handed over the question of immortality to faith and religion. We ask, what is the immortal? Is it the force of life, or is it ongoing consciousness? The hope of immortality is a very common view. But we cannot reason from the natural to the spiritual, from the outward to the inward. But there is a common belief and expression that we shall live again. Therefore we ask, what do we mean by immortality? And what do we mean by final judgment? Our language must be consistent. There is a resignation at death to the will of God. Eternal life must be expressed in forms of thought. There's Plato for you. Eternal life must be expressed in forms of thought. From language, from ignorance to knowledge, from arguing, from analogy. and with a consciousness of God. The ground of immortality is the perfection of the divine nature. We are in a process of transition. There are degrees of belief in immortality. Many forms present themselves today of that which remains after death. We have a hope of immortality to comfort ourselves, which transcends the sensate realm, but ultimately the symbol of the soul must turn to the language of Plato's ideas. And that's the final consideration of Block 2, and it's the most important consideration of Block 2. The symbol of the soul must turn to the language of Plato's realm of ideas. Plato links together eschatology and epistemology. He links together the eschatological end and the epistemology of acquisition of knowledge. But the key block for this lesson, the key block for the entire introduction, is Block 3. Pay special attention to Block 3. This will lead us into their next lesson, which is going to be a first examination of the original document. But Block 3 will set us up for the next lesson of examining the original document. So, Block 3, the argument for immortality of the soul. There are 4 arguments for immortality of the soul. Plato uses the cyclical argument. Contraries are generated by their contraries. Life is generated from death. It's a return of elements into their opposite in an ongoing cycle of nature. Then there's the recollection argument. We possess a latent understanding of the realm of ideas from former life in the realm of forms. Then there's the affinity argument. The soul has an affinity to the invisible and to the immortal, as do the forms, and it is not subject to change. Then there is number 4, the form of life argument. Plato says the soul is the form of life, the cause of life. Things alive possess a soul. Those are the 4 arguments used in the Phaedo, the cyclical argument. The recollection argument, the affinity argument, and the form of life argument. Now, 3.2, the 5 aspects of the argument of the Phaedo. The soul partakes in the realm of ideas. It is therefore eternal, because the realm of ideas is eternal. The methodology employed is obviously for Plato dialectical. The Phaedo belongs to Plato's intermediate period, which links immortality to the theory of ideas. That's the essential point. Remember, in the Meno, we got Plato's doctrine of forms, the doctrine of the ideas, the theory of ideas. Now in the Phaedo, Plato links the soul with the immortal theory of ideas. It is the form of life in the theory of ideas. They are linked in an interpenetrating way together. They are both immortal. Therefore, that is his foundational truth, but he goes through 4 arguments in the Phaedo to undergird this argument. What we're concerned about is getting an accurate picture in the introduction. Before we dive into the original document, we need to understand that this is basically 4 approaches to linking the soul with the realm of forms. Cyclical argument. Contraries are generated by their contraries. Life is generated out of death. It's a return of elements into their opposite, an ongoing cycle of nature. The recollection argument. We possess a latent pre-understanding of the realm of ideas. The soul is linked to this pre-understanding. Affinity argument. The soul has an affinity to the invisible, to the immortal, as do the forms. The form of life argument. Here's the equation. The soul is the form of life. There's your equation. The soul is the form of life, the cause of life. Things alive possess a soul. That's the four key arguments, but ultimately, if you look at 3.2, the soul partakes in the realm of ideas. That's what this whole argument, this whole dialogue is about. The soul partakes in the realm of ideas, right there. Block 3, note 2a. The soul partakes in the realm of ideas, and therefore it is dialectically related to the realm of ideas, and it is immortal, it is eternal. And the Phaedo is Plato's argument to support, four arguments to support this proposition. The soul is linked to the theory of ideas in Plato. So that's going to give us our introduction, and it's a very important introduction, a critically important introduction. It's important that you understand Block 3 especially. Review Block 3 again and again, but internalize Block 3 and you'll be ready for the original document, which will be our next lesson. In our next lesson, we're going to take a look at the first half of the original document. We're going to look at pages 155 to 182. We're going to look at pages 155 to 182. That'll be the first half of the original document, 155 to 182. 125 to 155 was the introduction. So next lesson was going to cover exactly half of the original Phaedo dialogue. That's going to wrap up our introduction to the Phaedo, pages 125 to 155.